everyone. Welcome to Awkward Devs number 142. Couple things on the agenda today. First, just going over Greg Glacier, which happened a few weeks ago already. Then a ton of merge stuff around Sepolia, Robston, latest valid hash, Gordy, and MEV Boost. And finally, I don't know if Henry is here, but we might have a quick update on EIP 4444. And yeah, I think that'll get us through the hour and a half. I guess just to start, anyone want to give a quick recap on Grey Glacier and what we saw? Otherwise, I can just go for it quickly.
Did we see nothing?
We saw the block times go back to 13 seconds. So if you look at the block time chart, it's just pretty clear it worked. Because this is like an update that changes how the difficulty is calculated, you can see on the first block that all the clients are in consensus. So like there's no like weird, potentially creeping issue that can hit us. So it seems like everything went well. I don't know if anyone noticed any issues.
So one thing, I'm really been paying very close attention, but I'm looking at the fork mod now and can see that there were 10 blocks mined on the old chain, the one that Open Ethereum is on. And so the timestamp on the last of those is 4 days ago. It was mined by Exapool.
I tried to reach out to Exapool. So there were two entities that seemed to be mining blocks on the old chain. One was like in a like a single address, so like not like the extra data was like 0x. The other one was Exapool. I did some searches online for Exapool. It seems like a project that has like shut down or something. So it's not clear. My impression after like spending 30, 40 minutes of searching on Google for it is it's like it seems like a project that was doing a bunch of blockchain things that shut down, and maybe someone somewhere forgot to turn off the mining rigs. So if anyone is listening and is in touch with Exapool, you still have some miners running on the the pre-Grey Glacier fork. Do you know, Martin, if are all the new blocks on the old chain still being mined by Exapool, or is it still a mix of the two Coinbase addresses?
I do not know. I mean, I could check it out, but I don't have it at hand in front of me.
Yeah. And I also sent them both an on-chain message telling them I'm not sure how much attention they're paying to their addresses. Yeah. Anything else? Oh, I think okay. So yeah, one of the miners, the one who is not Exapool, since I've sent them an on-chain message, they've mined the block on the updated chain, which is good. And then the second one, which I believe is Exapool, it seems like they've also mined some blocks on the main chain just today. Oh, I'm not sure that one is Exapool actually. Anyways, two of the miners that were mining on the old chain have migrated, but yeah, it might be worth looking into Exapool some more. Anything else? Okay. Cool. So I guess Next up on the merge, we also had a fork earlier this week for Sepolia. I know Perry, Danny, and a few people have been looking into it. Does anyone want to give like a quick update about the Sepolia merge?
Sure, I can go for that one. So Sequoia merged yesterday, if I'm not wrong. No, day before yesterday. Around, yeah, doesn't matter. Almost immediately after TTD was hit, rather about 2 epochs after, we noticed that a ton of participation was dropped and we were seeing a significant number of missed proposals. We traced that back down to config issues from a number of different validators on chain. And most of the config issues were patched relatively quickly. Once the config issues were patched, we did see proposals go back up to and attestation go back up to about 94, 95%. The remaining 5% are missing keys, so we would never hit 100% on this network until they're leaked out. We did notice that there was an invalid signature that was propagated through the network. We're still figuring out why that happened, but the network self-healed as expected. And besides that, I think since then we did notice that there was a Bezu, I guess the world state issue that was triggered on a couple of nodes, but they already have a fix for that. And I can link the PR and maybe someone from the Bezu team can talk about that. I think that's about all the issues that we saw on the network. In general, almost all of the issues were config related, which is great news. But that also means that for future forks, we're gonna have to work a lot more on communication, and we probably create like a guide of common pitfalls, as well as maybe working on a basic script that just validates if nodes are properly set up, if the right ports are used, if the right TTD is used, etc. I think that's it.
Probably also worth just stating that the config issues resulted from us essentially doing a strange UX, something that we've done on multiple proof of work testnets, where we essentially defensively set a very large TTD on the command line and then are supposed to remove that override or set that override to something lower. That is, from my understanding, the cause of a lot of the issues here. That is a strange UX to set and then unset, whereas on mainnet, it would likely be only reaction against some issue to set and not necessarily, and then not unset. So I think it's definitely a concern, and there's like things to do better here and to communicate better about, but I wouldn't suspect we see this issue on mainnet. There's all sorts of things you can get wrong and how you configure the setup. Don't get me wrong, but I don't think you'd see this one.
Definitely. I also don't think we can see this issue on Gurley because Gurley also has a relatively predictable difficulty. So we'd likely not have to do an override on Gurley.
And possibly not on mainnet as well, right?
Yeah.
Well,
exactly.
Right. If the override happened on mainnet, it would be not defensively and then needing to unset it. It'd be to accelerate because hash rate was dropping. So the UX and like the experience of doing that would also not have the same type of error that could be happen here.
Got it. Anything else from Sepolia? So aside from this config issue, basically, which was then fixed, a couple lost keys, and the Besu issue that we have a fix for, there were no other client level issues that we saw. Is that right?
Yeah, I think those were all the issues that we saw.
Yeah, and we still need to dig into this invalid signature, but yeah, that's not something that affects like the overall health of the chain. Oh, okay, and Gary from Besu has some mic issues, but he's saying that regarding this world state issue, the fix, there will be a fix for it part of a Besu release that's out in a few hours. The Besu version number is 22.4.4 to address that.
And also, just to follow up on that, I don't think that's a much related issue, and also didn't show up around TTD, but rather something to do with that database. And as far as I know, it was unrelated.
Got it.
That's correct, Pari. This is a rehash of the issue I spoke about last all core devs.
Cool. So yeah, that's really good. Obviously, like the configs, we need to do a better job of explaining, but yeah, the fact that everything kind of went smoothly from the client side is really, really good news. Anyone else have comments just on Sepolia? Okay, I guess Marius had something and he couldn't make the call, but he wanted to talk about choosing basically merge blocks for both Ropsten and Sepolia now that the merge has happened. I don't know if anyone else had the context on this. I know it was discussed a bit earlier this week as part of a testing meeting.
So the fork blocks would be the first block that is finalized after a terminal block?
No, I guess not, because we want the fork ID to be correct, and we want it in the future. I mean, this block. And also we would like to coordinate and upgrade. This is what I understand.
Okay. It needs a hard fork in order to have a fork ID in the future to disconnect potential clients that do not. Okay.
Exactly. I think it's to just unpair with the people who haven't merged.
And are we, I guess, is there enough value to do that before, say, Shanghai? Or can we just wait to Shanghai and retroactively add like a merge fork block there?
So I think it would simplify peering process when syncing nodes. That's the biggest improvement.
Right. At the cost of like having another hard fork, basically.
Yes. Yes. I think we can potentially do it after Gurley or after mainnet or after mainnet. I don't know, but we shouldn't like take too much time with it.
Or before mainnet to just test it. Right?
Okay, yeah, before mainnet. So okay. It can be considered as a part of the testing process too. This next as a hard fork that's for peering, right? It's a small thing, but it can be considered as part of testing.
And I guess the good thing is now that these these networks run on proof of stake, when we plan a fork, we can have like high certainty of when it happens. So what we could do is you could imagine having the release for the Goerli merge containing also the Ropsten and Sepolia merge fork blocks, and we can just like scatter them so they happen each like a day apart or something like that. And because it's proof of stake, we have really high assurance that this happens on that day. One thing, I assume this would be an EL only fork, right? So it's like you still trigger it at a block number.
So you could trigger it on a block number and have pretty high assurance of when it's going to happen. Block numbers don't always come at every 12 seconds in the EL.
Right.
But you could also trigger it on a timestamp, which is, there's a debate there on future hard forks as to like how you do the coordination. I think block number is probably fine here. We don't have to get into the debate. I would do Sepolia first. Well, I don't know. I would potentially do Sepolia first because it's like a very limited set of people running nodes. And so I think it'd be easy to see if it's working correctly. Whereas Robson's, I think, at least a bit more open.
Okay.
We can also make the argument that technically Robson's deprecated now. We only have to support Sequoia as well as Curly. So we don't have to go through the extra coordination effort for Robson.
That's true, actually. Yeah, we don't need to. Yeah, that's a good point.
If the aim is to just test that the
Yeah.
hard fork works.
Yeah, I think in that case, my suggestion would be we only do it on Sepolia as a nudge for people to move away from Robson, and it's a very soft nudge because basically they they can still use it. They just maybe get worse peering, and then yeah, we include that as part of the Gordy release. So just like for people, it's just like one release that they need to download for both the Sepolia merge block and the Gordy merge. Does that make sense to people? Okay, no objections, a couple of support. I would personally prefer to do it on a block just because it seems like it requires no work from the CL teams to do that, and the uncertainty we get by like missed slots seems quite low. So anyways, we can discuss this offline, but yeah, I think at a high level, we just do it for Sepolia, combine it with the Gordy release and see how that goes. Anything else on that? Okay. Latest valid hash. Mikhail or POTUS, do either of you want to walk us through the latest stuff in latest valid hash? I'll share the PR here.
Let me defer to POTUS as he's the proposing this change.
I was above writing in the chat, please, Mikhail, do it. All right, so I just put out a clarification about latest valid hash in the spec, and it turned down into a discussion that it seemed that it wasn't really clear a clarification. So I just want to state something, and I'm not sure if people would agree or not, but the way we're using the latest valid hash when we receive an invalid block is to prune our fork choice in the consensus layer side. And to prune the fork choice branch that is invalid, we need to know which were all the invalid blocks. So currently, what we're requesting is that the latest valid hash mean two things. It's actually a valid block. It's an ancestor of the invalid block, and is the last. And every descendant from that valid block leading to the invalid payload is invalid. So that means that we can do two things. We can remove the whole invalid branch and declare valid everything that is left out. Now, we do understand that there's some clients that cannot comply with this. And so there's a caveat that we can allow for a client to say, well, I just cannot give you this, but I can tell you that the last block is invalid. In some scenarios, yeah, so that is correct. It's correct. So there are some clients that can tell us quickly, look, this block is invalid. I have no clue what the latest valid hash is. And we're just asking, okay, so give us null, but don't give us the parent, because if you give us the parent, then we're going to make a wrong assumption about it.
Right. The worries is if you give latest valid hash as just the parent, the consensus layer now thinks the whole branch is valid, which is not the case. So it's best probably to make it clear that you don't know.
Yeah, can I just clarify?
Yeah.
Yeah, I just want to get that clarified one more time. So what you want to avoid is that an EL for some reason says, hey, the latest valid hash is this invalid block. That's what you
Well,
want to
more
avoid,
than an
right? Which
invalid
makes total
block,
sense.
the
to me.
problem is that the EL might say this latest valid hash is this thing that is the parent of the one that you gave me. And I just don't know the validity status of this one. I haven't executed it.
Yeah.
And this is a
Yeah,
problem.
Makes total sense. I think that makes sense what you're saying.
So
yeah, that may happen. Yeah, sorry.
yeah, so I wanted to discuss the scenario. So for example, we are syncing, right? And we got payload, and we know that it's invalid because, for example, I don't know, its hash doesn't work out, or it's
Yeah, like the header values are malformed. Those are
Yeah.
easy to assess.
Yeah, or the base fee change in a way that it shouldn't compared to a parent, which we also, for example, got in new payload, and we have. And we know that this is wrong, but we cannot really say which one is not valid because we are still syncing. So there's no way of saying which one was less valid. So this is like a problem for consensus execution layer.
Yeah, so in this case, you should return null as per PR.
Yeah, I think that's a reasonable scenario, a reasonable fix.
Yeah, and look
One
at
thing that
the
changes quite a bit
illustrations.
is that if
in
you
the
allow
pack.
clients to do this, then there's the risk that the EL might be lazy and always return null. And it's going to be spec compliant.
So we can just add high test for checking that, right?
So
Yeah, we
the other
already have
risk,
one.
the other risk is that EL is forced to sync an invalid branch that's known as invalid, which it might not be able to do because the network won't serve the data for it, and you have a deadlock.
Why?
Let's say there are more invalid ancestors in this chain, so all other clients already like discarded those blocks, and you won't be able to sync.
Yes, but I don't think it's like related to this exact PR.
Yeah, it's kind of like so the workaround would be if you required us to give you latest valid hash, then the only thing here because we cannot give it to you, we can only say syncing, right? And we need to try to sync to get the latest valid hash, right? That's the only way around it. If we cannot not give you the latest valid hash, and like I said, this might fail because of network state.
Right, you mean that
Yeah,
the valid ancestor is too old, so there's no state. Is that what you mean?
Yes, for example, yeah.
yeah, but if this branch is not available, CL should normally rework to the one that is available.
Yeah.
Because nobody will vote for valid branch or for not available branch.
Is your point that you need to do the null thing because otherwise there's a data availability problem on even attempting to continue to sync the thing that you saw this was invalid? Or are you saying the data availability problem results in this change, from this change?
Not sure if that was the question to me. So the problem is that we might get an invalid payload that cannot be synced, so we cannot get that valid hash. That's correct.
Yeah, so we need to be able to answer null.
Yeah, okay. I'm just that was, thank you for clarifying. Yeah, so
what do you mean by explicit flag value?
Well, I'm just worried about null being a little overloaded is all. It sounds like we're picking out a pretty specific use case where all the other fields that are in there, we know that they're invalid based on the state of the block. And it's really the relationship to the parent that's the problem because we're mid-sync, right? So, why not flag that as a specific scenario instead of just saying, okay, null.
I think null makes sense here because it means literally nothing.
Well, it's latest
the
valid
latest-
hash null, not that the whole response is null.
Yeah, we may argue about encoding it in a different way, but I don't think it's like worth to spend time here. Where it's better to spend time in the PR comments.
Okay.
Andrew?
Yeah, I think this change makes sense, but I would like to argue that can we use JSON null or nil, not this special like 0x value? That's my only comment.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm happy to take it to the repo. I don't have a strong preference on encoding.
Okay, and so it seems like everyone agrees that allowing the option to return null for the latest valid hash is good.
Yeah, in pretty certain scenarios, I think we need to be careful on how it's specified and make sure we have a few Hive tests to kind of show the difference between lazy behavior and correct behavior here.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, sorry. And why but JSON has new, right? So like I mean, can we use just JSON new type? It's a minor thing, but why I'm confused about this null and quotes because it can be without quotes, JSON new.
I think the one argument against that would be in the event that there were a few special scenarios and you wanted to say that in named flags. Otherwise, nil, I think, is totally fine.
POTUS?
Yeah, so regarding this PR, can we then assume that the latest valid hash is valid if we get one?
I mean, that's the intention of the specification, and I think as it should be, and we should make sure that the test scenarios cover that. I think if we clarify that and allow nil in certain cases, that I believe everyone can now conform.
Okay. So aside from like nil versus null, does anyone else have concerns or thoughts about that?
I do, but I posted them in the PR.
Thank you. And what is, I guess, is this something we can like get merged in the spec early next week, so that clients can like start working on the final like implementations for it sometime next week? Is that realistic?
Yeah, I think so. My unknown is how long to get a test in Hive, but we can circle back on that on Monday with Mario and others.
Right. Yeah. But it feels like at least we have this PR set, and the clients can start implementing the actual behavior in parallel to testing teams writing tests in Hive, and optimistically by end of next week, early the week after, we have the behavior correct in all the clients.
I think behavior-wise, if I read the code correctly, guess where it has this behavior. The difference is that we return a common, the zero hash instead of null.
Okay, so that's literally just
I don't
changing.
know. I guess Marius is not on the call. Let's see.
No, unfortunately not.
Nope.
Zero hashes for enough purpose is when you have to, as one CL, have to invalidate starting from transition block. When there's something wrong with the terminal block or with the transition block itself. So we use zero hash in this case.
Okay.
Okay. Anything else on this? Okay. I guess next up, wanted to talk about Gordy, and first, like just a quick, there was a quick question around Gordy about from Infura about do active proof of authority signers need to do anything after the Gordy merge? The assumption was like as soon as Gordy has finalized, as soon as Gordy is finalized, they can basically shut down their POA signers. But is there a reason why that's not the case?
So if they're running the actual merge software, so if they're running Geth or Aragon that's merge enabled and knows about the terminal block hash, they'll just stop producing blocks, if I understand correctly, or their blocks at least will stop being gossiped. I think they'll stop producing though, and so they would just stop producing and they can turn them off. Can someone validate that if I were running a miner or a clique signer against that it would stop?
That's the idea, yes.
Yeah.
Okay. And then I guess if for whatever reason it did not stop automatically, once they have confirmation that like we finalized on the proof of stake side, they can shut it down manually, but they shouldn't actually have to do that.
Right. And everyone else on the network is going to be rejecting those blocks anyway.
Yeah. But you could imagine there's a world where like their signer instances run separately from like other nodes that they may want to run. So like it requires, like they basically don't need to upgrade those nodes and they could leave them on the old version up to the merge. And yeah.
Right. The network will reject them and
yeah,
they'll be sequestered in their own little zone and they can turn them off.
Okay. Okay. That was my rough assumption, but I wanted to make sure that there wasn't a weird edge case we weren't thinking about. Cool. I guess so. The second note around Gordy is on the last couple calls we've talked about wanting to transition Gordy when we have code that's pretty much feature complete for mainnet, so that it can be like a good basically dress rehearsal for all the validators on mainnet and everybody else running a node. The people, like obviously there's like this change to the engine API we need to get in. Aside from that, I'm curious from client teams, like, is that like the last thing people feel that they want to have in before moving to Gordy, or are there other things that are still missing that we'd like to finish before we start looking at merging Gordy? And I'll just pick on random client teams. I'll start with Aragon because I saw you all pass the Hive tests earlier this week.
Yeah, thanks to Julio, we managed to fix them.
So is there anything on the Aragon side that you think still needs to be done, again, except this like engine API change before we move to Gordy?
I would like to test our sync performance and especially I'd like to reiterate, I think it's very important to enable checkpoint sync on the CL side, and on the mainnet it should be the default. Otherwise, if you join as a new node and without checkpoint sync, then it will be prohibitively slow. So yeah, more testing of sync performance.
Okay.
Well, yeah, there isn't really much else. We didn't get out of bug reports lately, so I mean, depends. I'm not sure, honestly.
Okay. Nethermine?
So I think we have still few bugs to iron out and Hive tests to pass. might be good to actually think about scheduling at least on one of the networks or both this fork ID change. Yeah, so we are close, but I would like to have a bit more time to finish everything. Marek, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, generally agree with you.
Okay. Besu?
Yeah, we have one Hive test left to complete, so we're working towards that. We're pretty optimistic on it. We still have some concerns with our bonsai implementation and some peering things, but nothing merge related. And so we're feeling pretty good.
Nice. And Git?
So it appears I'm not the guest team on this call. I've been away and training through Europe for the last 2 weeks, so I don't really feel comfortable giving our status, unfortunately.
No worries. Yeah. Okay, and I see there's obviously Prism, Teku on the call, Nimbus, like, yeah. Anyone else on this?
I guess
Yeah.
Yeah, so this is unrelated to execution layer, but I do think it's like quite important to test consensus layer client and the MEV boost interaction right at merge, especially on a testnet setup, because this is kind of our last chance to do this before the main event. So I posted this PR by Alex. Essentially, he outlined this merge transition delay, and I do think it's important that we merge this, or we come into some sort of agreement, and then put it into client code and basically test it. Yeah.
Okay, so it would make sense, yeah, to test the MEV boost stuff on Gordy. Yeah, so we've had a run at it before mainnet. Any other CL teams have an opinion they want to share?
For Teku, I think we're good to go. Agree with Terence. It would be good to test that transition, but other than that, all good.
Cool. And anyone else I missed? Sorry, there's a lot of folks on the call.
Lighthouse also wanted to
Yes.
test the transition with MEV boost, but we had an issue. We were actually doing that during the last testnet, but we had an issue, as you know. But yeah, we plan to do it for Gorelli, and we're going to do it for the next Shadow Forks.
Okay. Yeah, that's actually a good point. Are we running MEV boost on the Shadow Forks?
I have,
not right.
and it's been fine so far, but we just haven't run it during the merge.
Sorry, Perry, you were going to say something as well?
Yeah, we have Shadow Fork 9 scheduled for next week. If the relay infrastructure is in place, then I can give you some keys and maybe we can test that next week.
Yeah, I think
Perfect.
that'd be really cool if we can do it, yeah.
Yeah, I'd love to do it on a subset, you know, a noticeable subset, like 10%, but not 50.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that makes a ton of sense. So I guess you know, there's still like some small amount of work to do on all the EL side, on all the ELs, and then on the CLs, it seems like it's mostly just testing with MEV boost. I guess we have the CL call next week. We can see how things have gone since then, and if we feel comfortable picking a TTD for Gordy, then we can do it. And otherwise, if we need a bit more time, we can do 2 weeks from now on this call. But it seems like we're almost ready to pick something for Gordy. Does that generally make sense to people? I'll take this as no objections. Oh, yeah, Alex?
Yeah, I was going to say, since we're here, if any CL teams are listening, if you could take a look at the PR Terrence mentioned, 38 on the builder specs, and just be prepared to discuss on the next CL call, that would be good.
Cool. And yeah, I'll add, like, I know we've been doing this for a while already, but yeah, just making sure that all the EL teams have someone on the CL call next week as well. So if we make a decision for Gordy, or if there's any issue with your client, you can let us know. And worst case, if no one from like a CL team can make the, or from an EL team, sorry, can make the call, just leave a comment on the agenda if you have like a strong opinion or blocker. Yeah. Cool. I guess next up on the agenda, we
I had one more point on that, if I could just follow up on that.
Yeah, of course.
In order to make communication a bit easier and give people more time to update nodes, whenever we decide that Gurley TTD, should we also decide mainnet at the same time? And we can rather use Gurley as an abort, as in if we find something Gurley, we abort the mainnet TTD and we change that, or otherwise we go ahead and we get the benefit of easier communication.
I think from a communication standpoint, it's actually more complicated. And I say this as the person who writes the blog posts for all these upgrades, and they're pretty complex. I think what would simplify communication the most is if for Gordy, the TTD is chosen, like the real TTD is chosen basically from the get-go, and that clients have a binary which contains like everything, right? Like where there's no TTD override that has to be done, and there's no like you need to download a first version with the high TTD and a second version with the low TTD. I feel like if we can run through this process, and then also like do some stuff around like the staking launchpad and like making sure that that's all up to date, so that it's like smooth for users. I think that's probably the best thing, like community/communication wise. And then shortly after that, if it goes well, we can pick the TTD for mainnet. And similarly, like, and I think for mainnet, we also want to pick it pretty close to when it actually happens. So if we were to pick them both at the same time and say there's like, 2 weeks before Gordy and then 2 weeks before mainnet, you're like picking it, at least 4 weeks in the future. I feel like for mainnet, if we could pick it on the order of like 3 weeks or so in the future, that means that there's just a lesser chance that the hash rate changes a lot in that period. Yeah, I don't know. I feel like keeping them separate is better for like a community communications point of view, but maybe other people disagree.
But what about Bellatrix epoch for the mainnet? Should we we could probably pick it at the same time as like early, I don't know, TTD or.
I guess the question then
Bellatrix plus TTD.
Yeah, the question for CL teams is, do you want to pick the mainnet Bellatrix epoch before having seen MEV boost work on Gordy, which might be possible?
Well, there's also, that would require also users to upgrade twice because TTD would not be baked into the CL clients.
Oh, right. They'll have a super high TTD.
Which is not the end of the world. That's not the same thing as them setting that manually on the CLI. So again, it's not the same like UX that might fail here, but it is 2 points of coordination instead of 1. I would try to just do 1 if possible.
Yeah, and I think it's quite possible to do just 1 because of basically if someone can double the hash rate on mainnet and like make this TTD hit twice as quick, they can effectively 51% attack proof of work, which is like something we assume is not possible or probable today. So it seems like, yeah, if we have a large enough gap between Bellatrix and TTD, you can combine it in one release at the risk of just like hitting TTD maybe a bit later than you would if than you thought if the hash rate starts dropping. But from a UX perspective, that does seem better.
That's my current preference. I think it would have fewer end user errors.
Yeah.
Also makes sense to try the exact same thing on Gurley because the hash rate / difficulty is predictable on Gurley as well. We can just have have Bellatrix happen maybe 1 week before TTD is supposed to be a few days before. And then we can just adjust that tolerance for mainnet.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think on Gordy it can be much closer, right? Like you could imagine doing like Bellatrix on like a Tuesday, and then like Gordy on like and then TTD on like a Thursday or something, like an order of days. And then mainnet, you probably want like order of a couple weeks.
Yeah, I think we just have to be a bit aware in communicating that, because that would also imply people don't have 3 weeks to update their node, or they don't have up until TTD, but rather up until the Bellatrix hard fork.
Yeah, which is actually easier to communicate because we know when Bellatrix is, there's like a timestamp for Bellatrix. Yeah,
definitely. Yeah.
So while I can appreciate the UX improvement of having a single release that includes both Bellatrix and the TTD, what makes me uncomfortable is the precedent this sets, where we're switching from designing systems that are resilient against basically, state-sized attackers to systems that we hope work as long as no one big shows up to play. And while I generally agree with the sentiment that it's unlikely, I really dislike the direction we're taking, where we're saying, well, it's okay, don't worry about it. Like, historically, we've always worried about every scenario. And now we're saying, it's an unlikely scenario, and not unlikely in like the cryptographic sense of finding a hash collision, like which, we just put a bug fix in to address a potential hash collision with contracts and EOAs. And now we're saying, like that, the chances of that happening are like, if someone has all the Bitcoin hash power for a year, they can do that, and we fixed it. And now we're saying, well, if someone has 50% of ETH hash power, they can break or merge. And just like this direction makes me very uncomfortable. I agree, it's very unlikely, but it just seems like the wrong path to go down.
It's also, but contextually, this is a singular event, and we're making an assumption about the adversary during a singular event and not a perpetual adversary, which I think is certainly a different threat model than an adversary in perpetuity in the long term. So I am more comfortable making an assumption that the hash rate cannot double in the next 3 weeks, as opposed to making an assumption that such an adversary would never exist, which I think is the difference in this scenario. I understand. I hear your argument, though.
I agree. There is, and it's a very valid point, that having a persistent defending against a potential future adversary versus defending against an adversary that's going to show up in the next few weeks is certainly different. I'm a little bit worried that it's a very blurry line between those, and I'll think on it. Maybe I can be convinced that there's actually a bright line there, but it just feels like it feels like one of the first times we're making this call, where we're saying we know there's an adversary out there that is very realistic. Like someone, some government could have this much hash power. This is not out of the realm of possibility. This is very much within the realm of there are potentially actors out there who could do this, and we're just kind of ignoring it. And this is the first time we're doing that, I think. Yeah. And that's where I'm uncomfortable. Is we're crossing a line that we have not previously crossed, and I'm uncomfortable crossing new lines without thinking really hard about, is this a line that we're okay with crossing again and again and again and again in the future?
I think that's reasonable. I think, yeah, and there's like two other alternatives. One is like, yeah, you just have 2 releases, and like we did for Rupston, you can pre-warn users that there will be a second release, right? So, so like from a community and UX standpoint, it's less worse to have to download 2 releases if when you download the first one, they tell you need to then download the second one. I think the second one is like, if you want to absolutely have 1 release, then you can play with like the delay between between Bellatrix and hitting TTD, because you could imagine in the worst case, it's like that delay could be even longer than it would be with 2 releases. But yeah, I think, yeah, you definitely have like a valid point there, and it's something we should think through more.
Yeah, and to be clear, my argument here is almost entirely philosophical. Like we can set the difference, the time difference between the two so large that it's not just you need 51%. You need like 99% kind of thing. And so we can make that number very big, and we do have control of that by separating those 2 times a lot. Again, my argument here is primarily philosophical, because I feel like we're crossing a line that we have not crossed before, and I want to make sure that we're very intentionally crossing that line. We understand that precedents are strong, and people will look back at this and say, oh, we did it before, it's okay now. Like, I don't want to normalize this. And, if we're going to cross this bright line, we should set up a new line that is very clear that we don't cross in the future.
Yeah, I think that's a very reasonable stance. Anyone else have thoughts on that?
Yeah, if we went the other route, I just want us to be extremely careful and explicit and maximally simply so on how the UX for users goes, because it's order of magnitude more complicated.
Yeah, and I think it's like saying from the very first release, like you will need to download the second release, and also probably making it easy to verify when you've downloaded the second release that your current TTD is actually correct.
Yeah, I guess I'm most worried. Well, I'm worried about a lot of things, but I'm worried somebody then, updates their execution layer and doesn't update their consensus layer, and their consensus layer doesn't know about new TTD and things like that. Just those types of scenarios.
Yeah.
Don't we have a check between the EL and the CL that if they're out of sync with the TTD, they'll talk to each other and notice and do something?
They say they should have an error that goes to the logs.
But they'll continue running?
Logs. We are not doing anything with this.
So maybe in the next week or two, Danny and me can just scope out the pros and cons of the two options and share that on the next CL call, or ideally before, but at least then.
Sounds good.
Cool.
Yeah, I want to think through where the UX can fail to decide how bad it's worth one way or the other.
And then similarly, what's the failure, what's the attack scenario, and how different it is than our current the current things we're willing to tolerate, basically. And I feel also that whatever we end up using for mainnet, we should probably use for Gordy so that stakers have the opportunity to run through the entire process once as it will be on mainnet. Anything else on this? Okay. Then we have Leo from the Flashbots team to give an update on MEV Boost. Yeah.
I am here. Thanks. And I'm in a new place, so let's see how this goes. I have a bunch of things to say, so I made an agenda on the PM issue. I will go through them, and then at the end, we can focus on the things that you find interesting. Most of these things are linked to repositories around, so for the things that we don't discuss, there are places to continue the discussion if interesting. And I'm planning to attend these meetings all the time from now on, so the updates will be shorter, and if you have questions that you want to bring here, we will be around to answer them. So, well, yeah, I'm Leo for the ones that I haven't met, and I'm coordinating things from Flashbots around the merge. So I will be responsible for the things that we will be shipping. And I wanted to start with where we are. So what we have delivered is a permissionless protocol for validators to participate in MEV extraction, and a lot of people participating on the specification for this, so thanks to all of those. This is big. This is a super big change because in proof of work, we have the allowed list of miners, and that's a severe limitation. That's something that we wanted to avoid. And that was the first thing to achieve. We're there already. We have a stable relay that can connect to multiple builders. That also enables another avenue of experimentation on decentralization. We have a block builder that's optimized for MEV extraction, and then the validators don't have to focus, optimize for this. They can connect to the relay, to the builder, and participate on the network immediately. And we have 2 consensus clients ready for testing and the others in progress. So this week on our SIG meeting, we were like overwhelmed by all the things that we have in the backlog and all the ideas that come. And then we stepped back a little and we checked on this, and like this is huge. We were calling this milestone merge ready because these were the basic things that we wanted to have for the merge, and we are already here. So yeah, sometimes we just like lose the context. There's still a lot of things to do. But I would like us to step back and celebrate because so many people were involved in this. I took a look at all the work that went into the consensus clients implementing this, and it's a lot of commits, a lot of work, a lot of trials. So thank you, everybody. And well, now we spend the weekend celebrating what comes next. Since we have these 2 consensus clients ready, we want to publish the call for testing and start moving our communications around this to get more people to execute these things, provide feedback to everything on the stack. We spent the week shaking a few issues that were there, making a list of things that are expected to be weird on the logs. Reporting them, but I think it's now good enough for people to just give it a try. So we have a testing guide in the wiki. The wiki is open. The call for testing is in a pull request. So if you want to take a look, change some things, you are welcome, of course. That's what's immediately next, like now, in an hour or so, we will be making this public. What we were planning for the next months goes around 3 areas. First is MevBoost adoption. Make sure that people are using MevBoost as a way to mitigate MEV, and super relevant, make sure that the big validators, the staking pools, that the exchanges are following this protocol and not trying to solve this on their own way, opaque way, that everybody is like openly participating on this MEV mitigation, MEV spreading. So an important thing that we will start working on now is data transparency. Now that we have the relay and the builder working, we can start collecting numbers from what's going on there and making those numbers public. And the idea here is also to not play this role of mediators. Like currently, when searchers feel that miners are cheating, they come to us and we do the investigation, and then we are in charge of punishing the miners somehow. This is very uncomfortable, not the situation that we want. So with data transparency, we will enable people to identify when somebody is deviating, exploiting a hole, when something is not working as we designed it, and then everybody together can figure out a solution, not using flashbots as the mediator in there. And we will be restructuring our community around this too. The idea being that this shouldn't be a community of searchers and miners as it has been now. This is actually, in my mind, a community of researchers So all the roles that we're playing, all the data that we're collecting, all the experiments that we're running, ultimately are for decentralization, for a better handling of MEV. And we will be working on trying to design the workflows on everything that goes through our projects to be supporting that. So that's like what I will be coordinating these 3 months, and we will be trying to do that in the open, welcoming everybody to participate. So that's short-term call for testing, long-term like this restructuring of transparency and community of researchers. But then on the process itself, the plan of what to do next, we currently have one relay and one builder. We want multiple builders in here. And we have this issue open to see who's interested in running a builder. In here, we are being careful, like we are not super sure that the builders can be permissionless, that anybody can be a builder. But the specification, the protocol enables us to experiment a lot. So we want to see how to approach this issue, playing with one more builder that's independent, playing with 10 more builders that are independent, seeing what limitations we find in there. And we're writing a post that should come out next week about what are the possible conflicts in here, where the incentives break if an organization plays a couple of roles in here. Like what happens if the searcher is a builder? What happens if the validator is a builder? What happens if the relay is a builder? And this is Flashbot's case in this moment. Flashbot runs the relay and the builder, and it works only because it's trusted, right? We want to come up with a lot of ideas of what are the possible scenarios and what are the risks. And then this system should be designed in a way that it incentivizes independent parties to be running the roles that could be potentially in conflict. A lot to dig in there that I think will be the work in the next 3 months about who are the partners, who are the competition, who are the adversaries, how do we put all this energy into something that gives us a decentralized protocol. There are many questions to get there. So if the merge is happening on September, like being realistic with the resources we have, what we can achieve is a relay monitor, not like permissionless builders, not like permissionless relays, but some tool that the validators will be able to connect to get some reputation, measure the risk when they are communicating to a relay. Yeah, but then you see, this is like what was overwhelming. Then the monitor is centralized and we have to decentralize it. And it's, wow, so many things, but we're getting there. We need a lot of ideas on this. So on this issue for the agenda, I also put a link to the open questions. These are like the big things that we're researching that are defining how do we move the protocol forward. Please take a look there. Any thoughts, any ideas will be super interesting to hear. And yeah, if you have an interest in decentralizing this, let's do it together. Let's contribute to answer those questions, and then have multiple relays, multiple builders without this this mediation by flashbots. In the issue.
Sorry, there's a couple people that have their hands up, so I just want to make sure we can get to them. Yeah, I don't know do you want to quickly just wrap up? Sorry, yeah, and just want to make sure we can get to the other folks as well.
Yeah, I'm almost done. Just mentioning that on the issue, there are other things that are not like open research questions, but open practical things. Some are more complicated than others. Please take a look. On the meeting last week, we talked about sealed auctions or open auctions, and that might require changes by the consensus clients. So those kind of things, we need to discuss them early to give time to all the consensus clients to agree and implement, or take an alternative. Yeah, and just to close, a question for you. Like, I want us to test Map Boost on Girly, like be ready for the Girly merge. But I wanted to hear your opinion. And a crazy idea came out of all this brainstorming, intense work, that is Map Boost on proof of work. And that sounds like super fun, super interesting. That could give us a lot of testing that we need, like making sure that the systems we have will be ready for the merge. But we kind of discarded it because we cannot do both. This would require work on MEP-KEF and require like some communications with the miners. But I just wanted to throw the idea because it was fascinating for me. I got super motivated just with this possibility. It would shake things around. Maybe somebody would get interested and want to take it, push it forward, contribute something there. Or it's just a crazy idea that we will not implement because we are doing a lot of things already. Yeah, and that's all I wanted to mention. Yes, I do think we have time for many questions, so I will be here.
Awesome. Yeah. Thanks for the extensive update. Mika, I think you were first.
When you said you only have one builder, what do you mean by that? Do you mean that there's only one person who has come forward and saying, I'm going to build a block builder? Or do you mean there's only one person participating in testnets? What does that mean?
No, I mean that there's a Flashbots builder. And the Flashbots relay is currently communicating to the Flashbots builder. On this issue, where we are asking people to come forward and declare their interest, there are already like 3-4 people interested. Also through our network, we know there are more people interested in running a builder. Just we want everybody who's interested on this to participate openly, say it, and contribute.
So if I understand correctly, then you're just saying that currently Flashbots, the relay is permissioned, and you only have one person that is permissioned at the moment. Is that correct?
Yeah, that was the merge ready milestone, and now we will add more builders.
Eat Dreamer.
Hey, so in our testing of MEV Boost so far, we have this mock relay that Sean Anderson built that just like hits the execution engine. So we don't actually have MEV, but we can at least test the code pass through the consensus layer on Lighthouse. But is it possible for you guys to build a mainnet relay so that we can like have actual MEV on the shadow forks?
Yes, it's possible. Why don't we take this shadow fork that will come next week as a way to see what's required? This lack of MEV to test is what we will be tackling now with the community and testing work streams. Like, yeah, we are asking the relay for blocks, and the relay is talking to the builder for blocks, and the builder is talking to the mainnet, to the mempool for transactions. And then we're testing all the pieces, but we're not testing this end-to-end. So we need searchers to be involved in the testing, and we need sources of order flow. So the next step on this work stream is to talk to our top searchers, to talk to Uniswap, all the main sources for MEV extraction, and start sending some significant transactions into these testnets. So we have the idea of doing a capture the MEF incentivized testing situation. So I don't know, we highlight the smarter MEV extraction, and this gives a reward to the searcher that did it, the validator that participated. This requires some coordination, but if we want to be safe by the merge, I think we need like more realistic usage on these networks. We'll be working on it.
Thanks.
Terrence?
Yeah, so thanks for the summary, Leo. I just have two high-level points. I think one of the points is that if we do think we're gonna merge in like September, October, it's quite important to come into a date where we say that we are gonna freeze the API spec, meaning that there's going to be no more changes to the builder and then the builder API, so that we can also code freeze on our end too. So yeah, just a point on that. The second point I have is that we have a blocker where when we send 100 registrations, that it times out. So that is blocking us from testing on Robson and also Sepodia, but we can also take that offline. So yeah, thank you.
Yeah, so the Mateusz and Chris are working on the resilience of this relay and builder, right? So we are starting to hit it hard now with some of these testnets, and that tells us what do we need to do to make it responsive. I know they saw these problems, and I know they are working on them. I cannot comment a lot more, so I will let you talk to them. There were some strategies to reduce the load and to increase the capacity of the machines. And this is super good experimentation to figure out what are the requirements for a relay, a builder to be actually stable. Your other point about the API freeze, yes, in my mind, the API was freezed after Amsterdam, frozen after Amsterdam, but unexpected things come. So if it were for me, I will just freeze it now. All the things that will appear will be dealt post-merge, as our plan was calling this, merge ready. But that means some limitations, like this open or closed auction. We will have to deal with whatever is possible now. So I don't know, maybe insist more on taking a look at what's open, what we want to happen for the merge, and come to the agreement that all the other things will not be possible because we will freeze the API. Then we focus on testing, on resilience on this, on adoption, on measuring the numbers. And if nothing crazy happens, then okay, we're good to go for the merge. If something deadly appears on the testing, okay, we will have to think again, what does that mean? Will we have time to iterate once more on the API? Will that affect the merge or not? Yeah, so this is actually up to you. If it were for me, we close this and we start playing with all the other topics, but we will not make changes until the merge happens.
Cool. Any other questions?
All right, thanks a lot for the time. I insist, thanks a lot for the amazing work. So many hands going on in here. So step back, celebrate, because what comes next is going to be intense again. I'm super happy with being part of this.
Yeah.
I guess there is something I want to bring up. I think we were thinking that it might be best to disable MEV during the merge until finalization. I mean, it's a preference, but I thought it might be something we might want to discuss just to, eliminate the things that are going on during the merge.
I believe there's a PR up for this and that it's on the agenda for the call in 1 week with the consensus layer. And I've not heard anyone against it yet.
Yeah, we will follow whatever your preference is. We can not answer on the relay until we should answer. So that's another safeguard. I think that's why I want to test in early. We can prepare for that. We can see how that goes. We can see what are the risks by not extracting MEV on the first blocks. How much do we want to wait? Yeah, sounds okay.
I can give you a sneak peek of a potential argument for next week's call against it, and that is that MEV extraction is still likely to happen. It's just going to move somewhere else, and that somewhere else may be engineered more poorly than MEV boost is. And so we're just moving people out of the light thing that's engineered and tested by people we trust over to things that are engineered by people we don't.
Right, but
it's not clear that is an obvious one.
Well, the win is there's less interaction with the client software. So it's like you're willing to take more on-chain and obviously off-chain craziness, yeah, at the cost of just, or I guess for the benefit of just having less stuff touching the node.
Also, 20% of validators decide to use some crazy system and they go offline. That's probably okay. But
we can talk about this in the consensus call. I think it's
we'll slot some good time for it.
Yeah, like my preference is to go live from the first block. I understand the position of like there are so many things going on the first block, but yeah, like are we opening, like by not mitigating this upfront, are we opening the door for other crazy things to happen? We will follow you. Yeah, happy to.
Could compromise with just a command line override, defaulting to disabling until after finalization. But if you want to pass -- enable -- dangerous -- don't do this, then fine.
Right. There's one more thing I wanted to mention. So we have all these open questions and people are coming like wanting to implement the relays, and this is like fascinating. But when we talk to them, we realize that they don't understand MEV and they don't understand the risk or the responsibilities or the temptation of like going rogue if your relay becomes used. So my idea would be to insist on these people who want to run a relay to first run a builder, then get an idea of what's happening, get practice, get our support while getting their builder strong. And then, yeah, we cannot control who runs a builder and which validators go to which builders, but at least we would like them to be informed. So if you know or you want to participate on this, running a builder, running a relay, please talk to us, go to the issue, tell us, and we will be here to support you. And also like to hold you accountable for like what will happen and ask for your collaboration answering these hard questions.
Cool. Anything else around MEV boost? Okay, if not, we were going to have a 4.4's update today, but unfortunately Henry couldn't make it. There was an issue that was linked in the agenda, and I know that Alex and Light Client, you have like a bit of context on there. I don't know if there's anything quickly you want to share. Otherwise, we can just move all of this to the next call.
Yeah, I don't have
quickly.
Yeah, please do.
Okay, I can just say quickly that Henry is still working on this implementation that can import and export this data, this historical data out of Geth. And shortly he plans to take this format that we've sort of discussed in a few channels and put it into an EIP. So that'll probably happen for the next all core devs. So be on the lookout for that. I'm sure we'll post it on one of the Discord channels.
Cool. Any questions, comments, thoughts about that? Okay. And then if not, there's just two quick announcements. The first is this is the last All Core Devs calls on the Friday. So we agreed on the last call to move them to Thursdays. So the next All Core Devs is Thursday, July 21st and not Friday, July 22nd. So yeah, please update your calendars. We've updated the protocol call calendar as well. But yeah, last All Core Devs on a Friday today. And then final quick announcement, next Friday we have another merge community call. So for application developers, infrastructure providers and whatnot who have questions about the merge, this is the place to come and chat about it. If client teams want to send a couple people to show up, it's always useful to answer some like much more in the weed in the weeds questions. Yeah, so the link for that as well is in the agenda for All Core Devs today. And yeah, I think that's it. Anything else anyone wanted to chat about before we wrap up?
Wasn't 4444 on the agenda?
Yeah, that's what Light Client just covered. So Henry was supposed to give a full update, but he's not there. But basically,
Okay, it went by that fast.
Yeah. And I just the last link in the comments is like the longer, I guess, progress update.
There it is.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, I looked at that.
Yeah.
All we said is that we're going to talk about it later.
Yeah,
I read.
And Henry should have
I've already read this.
Okay, yeah, and there should be just like a proper EIP for like this specification of
Good.
the data.
Yeah, I've already studied this, so thanks.
Cool. Of course. Anything else? Okay, well, yeah, thanks everyone. And we'll see you in Thursday on 2 weeks from now.
Thank you.
See ya.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye. Thanks. Bye.
Thanks. Bye.